Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com. Hi, Al.
Hey, Donna. How you doing?
I'm well. It's so good to see you this morning and to chat with you.
Good to see you, too. So we've been on really a long rest from our last season of our podcast, haven't we?
Yes, we have been resting from podcasting, but I'd say that between the two of us, we've actually been very busy.
We have been very busy. We had a very busy summer.
Professional training programs, bringing Feldenkrais practitioners along, mentoring, teaching classes, as you have been too. A lot of very enriching work.
Indeed. So resting is the theme of this podcast today. We're going to talk about the importance of resting, how to use a rest to help you learn and improve yourself and be more effective.
Well, if I was not a good rester, I don't think I could keep the pace that I've been keeping up during the last several months. Fortunately, I rest every day. So I teach maybe 4 or 5 hours, but I spend at least an hour resting, if not more. And one of the good fortunes of teaching the Feldenkrais method is that we actually do the lessons that we're going to teach so that they're familiar in our nervous system, so that our sensory system can actually have an experience while we're teaching similar to what our students are having. And that intensifies their learning.
Yeah, it does. So I rest every day too. I mean, I work pretty hard physically as well as giving lessons and teaching and my house projects as well. That was always a big part of my life. And so I rest every day. And that's in the form of a nap. And that's always rejuvenating and invigorating to me. And then there's the rests like you're talking about when we approach a Feldenkrais lesson or learning situation, which is a little bit different than like actually going to sleep for a little while.
That's true. And while you're listening, listeners, just notice your breathing. It's possible to begin to shift your attention and to calm your autonomic nervous system by simply paying attention to your breathing. Maybe notice your exhalation in particular. So we know that when you breathe out, it creates a calmer effect in your nervous system. And when you breathe in, it excites your nervous system. So extend your exhalation a little bit and continue to pay attention to your breathing while you're listening to us chat. That's something you can actually do on and off all day.
Just check in with your breath, slow it down, pay attention to the exhale, and bring yourself down into a more calm, relaxed, receptive state.
That's right. And as we do that, we become more open and available to information. We're able to see, hear, observe, and respond more accurately to the surroundings. Now, you can imagine when you're in a state, because I know the state and I know everybody listening does, of acceleration. When we're going fast, we make mistakes and we're not able to absorb our surroundings in the same way. So we can simply practice going a little bit slower. But as Dr. Feldenkrais said, you can go fast without hurrying. And using your breath will help maintain and decelerate your nervous system. It reduces the tendency to go toward burnout.
Slowing down allows us to take in more sensory information, and that enriches our experience, of course. And that's what we're interested in doing in lessons too, isn't it? So we ask people to do slow movements and take their time and coordinate with the breath. And then after we do a few movements, we have people stop and rest. This is an opportunity for the brain and the nervous system to process what it's just been doing. And a few months ago, I came across a research article. I subscribed to this neuroscience newsletter, and there was an article in there about how they can use MRI now to look and see what goes on in people's brains. And so they did a research study on resting, waking rests, like we do in our lessons. And so what they could see happening in the brain is that when somebody stopped doing what they were doing, the brain quickly, very quickly, reviewed what that person was just doing and refined it. So when they come back to it, it gets easier. Now, Feldenkrais knew this decades ago. He understood this decades ago and made that an integral part of his lessons. And it's true. When we're doing a lesson, we stop and rest, and then we come back to that movement. It's easier. It's refined. Something's improved about it. And I also tell people in a class, learning situation, if they're doing a movement and it gets confusing or start to get fatigued or tired, stop and rest, and then come back to it. And it's easier. It's more integrated again, which is another interesting thing to talk about. I don't think we can talk about resting without discussing fatigue a little bit. Fatigue is a really interesting thing. And Feldenkrais talks about that in his book, Body and Mature Behavior, as it not being fatigue of the muscles, but fatigue of the nervous system and the brain. And that is what the rest does. It allows the brain and the nervous system to reset itself, to take a little break, and then come back to it. And the muscles are fine. It's the nervous system and the brain that need a rest. And that's the kind of fatigue that he was talking about.
And we all know what that feels like. We know what it's like when we've gone beyond our comfort zone with activity. And it may be a mental process that we've been engaging in. It can be that we've been physically exhausting ourselves. It can have to do with family interactions and stimulation, which we love. At least I do. I love being with my family and my grandbabies. But there are moments of fatigue that overcome me because you don't get to sit down and check out when you're with a 1-year-old. You don't get to rest until they take a nap. And during nap time, sometimes we keep going and do the dishes and do all the other things. So I'm practicing resting more when I'm with them so that I have really good energy and attention for them when they're awake, because I love interacting with them and I can tell that they love that one-on-one attention. And, that pertains to our functional integration lessons too, the kind of work we do with our hands-on people and moving people gently. We show up with all of our senses. We're listening, we're sensing, we're actually touching people, we're observing, we're selecting how we respond to them so that we can give them the greatest benefit to being with us. And that's full-on attention, more demanding than most situations. Yeah,
it's true. In that situation, too, I rest a lot. I give them rests from what we're doing. It's just a few seconds. It doesn't have to be like a nap. It could just be just a few seconds. 10, 15 seconds can be really adequate rest to help the learning process. And so even when I'm teaching, I need to take rests. So I'm teaching a class, and I can tell when I'm starting to get a little fatigued, I start to get my lefts and rights mixed up. I'll have little, moments of confusion, and people start giving me funny looks and things like that. So I go, okay, everybody take a rest. Teacher needs a rest too. And I use that as a teaching example of when to rest. So I'm a professional, I'm teaching, and I recognize that in myself is that I need to take a rest. And so I make that part of the lesson and part of the teaching experience. So we all take a rest and then come back to it. My teaching's better and their experience is improved. And it gives them an example of how you take care of yourself while you're working. And people can do that better and better. Now, I know in Europe, it's common for people to talk about suffering from burnout. We don't have that so much here in California. People say they need to take breaks. They go on vacations. They have all kinds of aches and pains. And
sincerely ways of suffering. People do. I think it's interesting when people talk about having burnout. It's a legitimate diagnosis in Europe. People can go away. They can get insurance coverage for going away for 3 weeks, a month at a time to recover from burnout. Now, I'm guessing that, and I've known people who have done that, that people in that situation have not been resting. And in some situations, they have had shocks to their system. Someone's passed away or a loved one is not well, whatever the case may be, or they've worked very, very long hours, pushing, and they feel completely fatigued and exhausted. Now, burnout is an interesting thing. Again, the word, the concept, it's different than saying I'm depressed. It's saying that my nervous system is exhausted. I'm exhausted. And fortunately, people can get the help they need. Now, I'm guessing that if we were all taught to rest periodically, sit with ourselves, lie down, catch up with ourselves, that we could probably take a nice vacation and not have to go to the extent that burnout represents. Actually, learning how to rest is so productive.
I really make that a point to my students that learning how to rest and knowing when to rest is not just for Feldenkrais lessons. It's an aspect that ought to be practiced or can be practiced in the daily life. It's like noticing when things start to get a little off, or when you're not feeling quite right, or you're doing an activity and you start to get fatigued, just stop and rest. And I'm always so proud of my students when they give me feedback that they actually do that. And they find that it helps. It makes it easier to do the things they want to do and do them well.
I remember Pascal, a quote that was something like, the ills of humanity come from a person not being able to sit alone in a room. And I wonder about this achievement-oriented culture that we live in. And that pushing that we do. There's a certain way that we run away from ourselves when we are always engaged in productivity, that we don't sit quietly and gaze out into nature, or sit quietly by a fire and look at the fire. And I believe that we need that time to integrate our thoughts and our experiences.
I totally agree with you about our culture, being so achievement-oriented and pushing. And so, like you're saying, to get out of that, we go into a Feldenkrais situation, a learning situation, and start to have some freedom and choice in what we do.
Now, freedom and choice from this busy culture of ours, this fast pace that we all keep, the pushing that we even do with our children, school all day, sitting in chairs. Sure, there's some physical education breaks. And then after school, more lessons, more time doing, achieving, learning. We know that play, open play, teaches kids how to problem solve. And adults need play too. Game playing, discussions, goofing around, ping pong, whatever it is, whatever we're capable of doing. We need to change how we're using our minds so that we smile and have joyful moments and interactions that are, they're clever and fun and non-achievement oriented. I love playing ping pong or other games without winning or losing, just, play, keep it going. It takes all the stress out of it. If you're playing for points, I immediately have a shift in my demeanor.
Yeah. And, Feldenkrais lessons are just that. They are non-achievement oriented learning experiences. They're just ways of sensing, experiencing yourself. There's always surprises along the way. You discover things about yourself. And in the end of the lesson, you are reorganized in a different way, in a pleasant way that helps you feel better and smile more and be more functional and happy in your life. And that's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing, and it trains our attention for quality of experience.
Yes.
What's the quality of your experience? Letting go of the goal and finding that you actually do something better and easier, rolling over to sitting up to, picking up something off the ground to bending and putting your tushy in a chair. I mean, everything becomes quality rather than achievement. And this transfers to athletic ability. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to get into a competitive situation. If you're inclined to do so, you can even compete with yourself and see if your running time improves. And we know that athletes need to rest too, that all athletes are able to do more when they rest often. Now, I think that looking at our busy culture is kind of an interesting thing because we overextend ourselves in so many ways. And we do that by pleasing other people. We've been talking a lot about achievement and competition. We can look at other things that we commit to doing that go against what's actually good for us.
One thing that popped into my head is how we're trying to prove ourselves. For men, proving oneself is huge. And that is a big part of a man's development. And letting go of that is really important, because if you can let go of that need to prove yourself and just be yourself, that makes a whole big difference in the world. It takes a lot of work and a lot of stress out of things. Do young women have that pressure to prove themselves as well?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, probably different flavors, and some people are not as identified with male, female, but I think it comes in every brand. No matter what your identity is, I think that people are taught to overachieve and to prove. And perhaps that comes from this sense of not being enough, not being smart enough. The whole not enough thing is a constant part of our education system because people are compared and their test scores and how much do you do and what do you know, on and on and on.
That adds so much tension and effort to life.
Yes.
To do that. Fortunately, now as an older guy, I let go of a lot of that stuff.
That's one of the benefits of aging. I think that's true. For me too. It's like, okay, here you go. What you see is what you get. I enjoy these conversations with you, and I hope they're very beneficial to people, but it's not about competing with another podcast.
Yeah. So we come back to resting and having that ability to rest, to know when to rest and why to rest is really important. I want to share a fun little story. My first experience learning about resting, I was in my early 20s and I was in my NLP training, finishing up my NLP training. John Grinder, the co-developer of NLP, he's doing testing for us. And he was really into conga drumming at the time. And so I thought, I'm going to get a conga drum. I'm going to drum with John Grinder. So I borrowed a friend's conga drum. And so I go in there and meet him at lunch and got my conga drum. I'm like totally psyched. I sit down and John looks at me and he says, teach me something. And I'm like, well, I've never actually drummed before. And he goes, okay. So he starts to teach me a basic pattern on the conga drum, and I kind of get it, and then I lose it, and I kind of get it, and I go for a while, and I lose it. And he said something really important to me. He said, do it well, and then stop and rest. So that message you give to your nervous system is one of excellence, of doing it well. And so sometimes I'll bring that into my classes too, or when I'm doing functional integration lessons with somebody. When I have people I see them doing it well, I can feel somebody doing it well, stop and rest and let that be the moment of rest. So we don't have to go all the way to fatigue. We can stop and rest on a moment of excellence and let that be the part that the nervous system processes and refines. And then we come back to it and we can build on that excellence, making it even better. So that was really important learning for me, and I've kept that with me. It really stuck with me through the decades, and it has been decades since that happened.
Those moments of learning, they're peak moments that do stay with you forever. Now, there is research that has to do with resting and leadership. And what people have found is that when leaders rest frequently, their creativity increases, their integrity, their ability to listen, their ability to value others and themselves. There comes with listening a presence that includes a sense of being genuine and humble and the ability to empower others. Now, I'm sure there are other attributes too, but I think it's so interesting to see how many benefits come from resting.
And I'd like to suggest that there's a way that people can find opportunities to rest frequently by visiting your website or my website and downloading some of the audio programs we have available, or by joining one of our classes, and they can rest in real time with us, you or me, in our classes. And those are really excellent opportunities to go into a learning situation like that, a Feldenkrais learning situation, and really have that experience that we're talking about of learning, moving, sensing, feeling, resting, improving, moving, learning, feeling, and so on. It's a great experience.
Thanks so much, Al. It was really fun having this conversation with you, and I look forward to our next chat.
Yeah, me too. Take care. Bye.
Bye now. Bye, everyone. Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com.